Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Street Talk and other stuff. Mike Maddog, Magnotti on this fine Monday in November. Thanksgiving's coming. Getting ready for it. It's great. Good to have you here. Appreciate you being here today. Thanks, son. I got an interesting show today. No guests, just me. We're going to be doing an interesting thing, and I hope you enjoy it. But just before we start, just a couple of things. There was a man who was a lifelong Republican. Oh, vehement Republican all his life. And he's laying on his deathbed, and when his family comes to gather around to say goodbye to him, he says, I'm switching to the Democrat Party. I'm going to be a Democrat. And they all go, oh my gosh, what are you doing? How could you do this? You've been a lifelong Republican all your life. Yeah, you know, how could you do this? And the man said, because if one of us has to die, I want it to be one of them. Oh, and you know what a Democrat's favorite vegetable is? Broccoli. Okay, and Ronald Reagan once said that politics is supposedly the world's second oldest profession, and after he got into it himself, he realized how much it resembled the first. You can think about that one for a little bit. And here's a question for all of us. When we have a Miss America pageant, we have 50 people to choose from. How come we only get 2 for the people running for the President of the United States? That's just something to think about. But hey, Street Talk and other stuff. I think you're going to enjoy today's show. Mike, Maddog, Magnotti, you stick around. We'll be right back.
NCW Life Channel is proud to present the Spotlight on Business. We're going behind the scenes to bring you the story of local businesses throughout North Central Washington. How did they get started, and why are they so successful? We'll answer these and other questions each week with Spotlight on Business, Sundays through Fridays on the NCW Life Channel.
Lakeland Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Schland Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
Eastern Washington. It's a great place to call home and a great time to own a home. It's the ideal place to lay down roots for your family and your future. Gisa Credit Union thinks Eastern Washington is a great place to own a home too. That's why we offer all kinds of home loans with personal attention every step of the way. We're your home. For home loans, we're Gisa Credit Union.
What's your Automocha emergency?
It's a Paprika mocha with whip.
The espresso shakes are my most favorite because I can get any flavor. Peanut butter chocolate for pita.
Definitely the espresso shakes.
My favorite is the mocha for pitas.
A peach Red Bull.
Okay, Street Talk and other stuff. We're back. As you can see, it's just me today because I want to do a show called Presidential Peccadillos. Now, I've been thinking about this for quite some time because our current president has prompted a lot of people to question the issues of integrity, character, intelligence, all that type of thing. And particularly, the thing I find most disturbing about our current president is his attitude towards women. But as we're going to see in the show today, is that this is something that's been an issue with our presidents for quite some time. Now, most of the information I got today is from one specific book, which was called White House Confidential, the little book of weird presidential history. It was written by 2 gentlemen, a Greg Stebbin and an Austin Hill. I believe one of them has since passed away. And this not only talks about the sexual behavior of the people who've sat in the Oval Office, it talks about other things, but that's I'm going to focus on that particular area today, the personal irresponsibility of some of our commanders-in-chief as time goes on. So just running by some stuff, but I want you to keep something in mind. There was a man named Henry Kissinger. He was President Nixon's Secretary of State, a brilliant man, excellent at his job. He once was quoted in the New York Times, this is October 28, 1973. He said, "Power is the greatest aphrodisiac." And then he was quoted a little differently in 1971 in January, but pretty much saying the same thing. Power is the great aphrodisiac, is what he supposedly said at that time. And what he meant was, this is obvious. You know, people of power have this sexual aura or magnetism about them, which is a little bit odd, but still understandable. So, President of the United States, leader of the free world, most powerful man in the world, yeah, you can see how this would apply. Okay, now let's start with our first president, George Washington. Now, not so much about him, but George, a man of great character, great intellectual capability, much respected, but he supposedly had an affair with a woman named Sally Fairfax. Now, in all, you know, fairness, this was before he was married to Martha. So who cares, right? No big deal. All right, and then John Adams, our second president, he was considered a man of great fidelity. He was not ever found to be anyone who misbehaved, but there was a rumor going around about him back at his time. He was accused of sending a General George Coatsworth Pickney to England in a U.S. warship to pick up 4 women to bring back so that Adams could have 2 as a mistress and Pickney could have 2 as a mistress. Now, again, this was just a rumor, but when it was brought to President Adams' attention, he said, "If this were true, General Pickney has kept them all for himself and cheated me out of my 2. Nice to know those guys had a sense of humor back then. All right, now, Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, they're squaring off for the presidency. They're running against each other. And, you know, politics was just as dirty as it is now. And some rumor mongers tried to discredit Wilson by accusing him of previously having an affair with a woman by the name of Mrs. Peck. And supposedly this had happened when the two had met in Bermuda. Now, apparently, though, the truth was that the affair was platonic and only a friendship between these two existed between Woodrow Wilson and Mrs. Peck. But Teddy Roosevelt, was still able to get some mileage out of this. He didn't promote, you know, the rumor falsely, but he was still able to get some mileage out of this by saying referring to Wilson, and he said, "You can't cast a man as a Romeo when he looks and acts like an apothecary clerk." So even though he didn't use the rumor in an underhanded way, he still was able to get some mileage, Teddy Roosevelt was, against his opponent, Woodrow Wilson. Okay, but Wilson did begin to see another woman after his wife died. His wife passed away, and about a year later, while he was in office, he started to date a woman by the name of Edith Galt. Well, again, his wife passed away, a year had passed, a respectable period of time. So after they announced their engagement, President Wilson and Edith Galt, the Washington Post ran a front-page article about the couple's first day out in public, but no one caught the typo when the paper printed in large type, "The president spent the afternoon entering his new fiancée." Oh, that's good. Yeah. If you guys are taping this or you're watching it live on the internet, you can run that back and go over the joke. That was pretty good. All right. Okay, President Eisenhower. He was, of course, the commander-in-chief of the Allied forces during World War II. Did an excellent job. But he was married to Mamie at the time, but he had a driver while he was in Europe, commanding the Allied forces, and this driver was a woman by the name of Kay Summersby. Now, Summersby was an attractive fashion model and an actress, and somehow she was assigned to be Eisenhower's driver while they were in Europe together. Now, frankly, I've seen pictures of Summersby. I think she's okay. I don't find her all that gorgeous, or maybe the pictures I've seen on the internet just weren't all that good of her. But the history is divided whether or not there was an affair between the two or not. Some people claim definitely there was. Evidently, Summersby at one point in a book alleged that there was, but there's no real hardcore proof to it. They were undeniably close, though. And later, as I said, in an autobiography Summersby wrote later in her life, she did claim or alluded to the fact that she did have an affair with Ike. But this confession of hers is also just considered ambiguous, and it's continued to be legitimately challenged. And there was another rumor that's also been challenged, that Henry Truman claimed that at one point Ike requested permission from his Army superiors to divorce Mamie and marry Summersby instead. Truman evidently claimed that. That's never been proved. But, you know, this kind of stuff was going on. So just kind of interesting. Don't know for sure whatever happened between Ike and Summersby. Okay, well then we get to John F. Kennedy. All right. Now, I was alive when Kennedy was assassinated. In many ways, he was a good president. I really believe his intention was to get us out of Vietnam at the time. I think it was headed in that direction, but unfortunately, he was assassinated when he was in Dallas. Okay, but when it came to Kennedy's relationships with women, someone, and this is quoted in the book I gave to you earlier, said that perhaps it would be easier to list the names of the few glamorous and beautiful women of the time who didn't sleep with Kennedy. Such was his reputation. Okay, but among those who were suspected, quite a noteworthy group. Marilyn Monroe, of course. She's the one who usually comes to mind first of all. Jane Mansfield, Audrey Hepburn, Angie Dickinson, and stripper Blaze Starr were among those who were alleged to be mistresses of John F. Kennedy. But also there was a gangster moll by the name of Judith Exner Campbell, who Kennedy was linked with as well. And from a different book than what I quoted earlier, a book called Presidential Sex, written by a Wesley O. Haggood. Haggood says, and I quote from the book, Jack had numerous sexual encounters with many women. Some were well-known movie stars and burlesque queens. Others were high-class call girls and common prostitutes. His sexual partners also included White House staffers, secretaries, stewardesses, socialites, campaign workers, and acquaintances of his trusted male friends. Such was his reputation. Now, with Marilyn Monroe, of course, the most famous of all these women that Kennedy allegedly had an affair with, the book I read earlier, or the book I quoted earlier, what was the name of it again? I can't remember. What did I say? Whatever the name of the book was. Yeah, White House Confidential. It says that Kennedy met Marilyn Monroe at the home of his sister in Santa Monica and later at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Occasionally, he had affairs or had occasion to spend time with her there. And it's also rumored that he did entertain Miss Monroe at the White House and on Air Force One. Now, Marilyn Monroe supposedly began to hope that John F. Kennedy was going to leave Jackie and marry her, but supposedly JFK's brother Bobby was sent to Marilyn Monroe to clear this up, and then supposedly those two had a torrid affair for a while before Bobby broke that off. Now, to get back to what I said earlier, I mean, the last woman I mentioned, this Judith Exner Campbell, JFK was connected with this woman who was introduced to John F. Kennedy by Frank Sinatra. And we know Frank Sinatra supposedly had contacts with who is referred to as La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours, more commonly known as the Mafia. And Exner Campbell claimed in her autobiography that she was someone with whom JFK had an affair with for 2 years, and this included her being invited to spend time with him at the White House and on Air Force One. Now, Exner later became the mistress of Sam Giancana. You'd think I'd get these Italian names right. She later became the mistress of Sam Giancana, who was an Sicilian-American mobster, notable as being the crime boss of the criminal Chicago outfit between 1957 and 1966. So if rumors be true, we have to at least have some sort of abstract admiration for Kennedy's ability to celebrate diversity, shall we say. All right. Now, Kennedy's successor, Lyndon Baines Johnson. We're going to get to him in a minute. This is an interesting one, and this was stuff I didn't know, but we need to take a break, so stick around. Presidential Peccadillos with Mike Maddog Magnotti. We will be right back.
Turn back the clocks and grab the ice melt. Winter weather is here. This is Corey at Rose Tractor. If you're looking for a reliable way to clear snow, look no further than Cub Cadet. For sidewalks and driveways, a Cub Cadet snow thrower will get the job done in a jiffy. For larger jobs, a Cub Cadet Challenger utility vehicle with a snow blade will handle about anything. You can depend on Cub Cadet for years of reliable performance, and we'll help you select the best model for your job at Rose Tractor, family-run business at the corner of 3rd and Rock Island Road in East Wenatchee.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
If you are looking for dependable car service and repair, visit the good guys at Quick Lube and Tune. They've been keeping cars and trucks in the Wenatchee Valley running smooth for 35 years. Quick Lube and Tune is your hometown shop for a 10-minute oil change, complete tune-ups, alignments, brakes, mufflers, air conditioning service, and more. Get more life out of your vehicle by bringing it to the local guys you can trust at Quick Lube and Tune on South Wenatchee Avenue.
Hello, Wenatchee Valley. Christian Chamberlain here with Bay Equity Home Loans.
Let us make your dream of home ownership a reality. We're here to guide you through the loan process every step of the way. Check out our convenient online application. Bay Equity Home Loans in Wenatchee, your home for loans.
Stop on by or give us a call today.
Okay, we're back. Street Talk and other stuff. Mike Maddog Magnotti. We're talking about presidential peccadillos, and this is information I've taken from a book called White House Confidential by Greg Stubin and Austin Hill. Now, we left off at the break. We begin to talk about LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who is described in this book as a known womanizer. And they quote his wife, Lady Bird, who once said, "My husband, LBJ, loved people. He loved all people. Now, half the people in the world are women. You think I could have kept my husband away from half the people in the world?" Interesting thing for a wife to say about her husband. LBJ was reported once to have, while on a working trip to his ranch in Texas, he appeared at the bed of a staffer in the middle of the night and said, "Move over. This is your president." And he once bragged, LBJ did, that he had, and I quote, "more women by accident than Kennedy ever had on purpose," unquote. And when Johnson became president, he continued to cheat on his wife, even in the White House. Once, according to the book I've quoted, Lady Bird walked in on her husband while he was having sex with one of his secretaries on a sofa in the Oval Office. An angry Johnson then ordered the Secret Service to install a buzzer system to alert him whenever his wife was close by, approaching the Oval Office. This incident evidently occurred just months after LBJ was elected to office, and a former Secret Service agent was quoted as saying, "If we saw Lady Bird heading for the elevator or stairs, we were to ring the buzzer." All right, now, LBJ also supposedly had a 21-year affair with a woman by the name of Madeline Brown, who also later claimed that she gave birth to LBJ's son. And there was another affair, even longer, supposedly for 31 years, with a woman by the name of Alice Glass, who later said she quit sleeping with LBJ because she disagreed with him over his Vietnam policies. So, all right, now, this one. Richard Nixon, who we referred to as Tricky Dick back in the 60s. Did Richard Nixon have an illicit love affair with a beautiful Hong Kong waitress? Well, no one knows for certain, but there is circumstantial evidence to at least cast some suspicion on his behavior. Now, during an official visit to Hong Kong in 1958, then U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon, he was vice president at the time, he was rumored to have had an affair with a woman by the name of Marilyn Liu. She was a beautiful Chinese cocktail waitress who was working at the Hilton Hotel where Nixon was supposedly staying. Now, Nixon's term as vice president ended in 1960, but he reportedly returned again to Hong Kong in 1964, 65, and 66 with the intent to surreptitiously see Miss Liu. On one such visit, Nixon and his good friend Miami millionaire Bebe Rebozo, that's a name we haven't heard for quite some time, they visited Miss Liu at the Den, the cocktail lounge where Miss Liu worked. Now, later that evening, as it was reported, the waitress, Miss Liu, and a friend reportedly visited these two men in their hotel suite. Now, this story's never been confirmed, and Miss Liu has always denied that she's had an affair with Richard Nixon. But in 1969, she emigrated to the United States, moved to California, and just by coincidence, ended up choosing the town of Whittier, California, as the place where she would live. Now, we all know Whittier is the birthplace or the home base of Richard Nixon. And Miss Liu evidently visited Nixon in the White House twice, but the relationship, if there was one, supposedly ended when Pat Nixon was onto it, as the book states. That's interesting. You know, you look at Richard Nixon, he doesn't really look like he would, I don't know, inspire that type of behavior. But I guess that brings us back to Kissinger's quote about power being the greatest aphrodisiac. Okay, now Jerry Ford, he supposedly kept his nose clean all throughout. Now, I don't have anything interesting to talk about Mr. Ford, but his vice president, Nelson Rockefeller, died in interesting circumstances. Now, it was first reported that Mr. Rockefeller, Vice President Rockefeller, died at his desk going over a book of art prints. Well, it was later established that he died in his office in a townhouse that he owned, and present with him were wine, snacks, and a very hot 25-year-old young lady in a black evening gown named Megan Marshak. Now, supposedly, Mr. Rockefeller, Vice President Rockefeller, had a heart attack, and Miss Marshak didn't do anything about it, didn't call anyone but a girlfriend until an hour after Rockefeller supposedly passed away. Now, nothing was ever proven. The family did not allow an autopsy of the vice president, and he was cremated 18 hours after his death. But it was later reported that Rockefeller's 18-year-old grandson, Stephen, was once asked what he would say to Miss Marshak if he ever had a chance to meet her, and he was quoted to have said that he would say to her, "I hope you made my grandfather very happy." Okay, well, good grandson. All right. Now, then we have a dry period for quite some time. It seemed the presidents behaved themselves. Jimmy Carter, of course, claimed in a Playboy interview that he lusted after women, but never did anything about it. Now, actually, I respected that answer, that he said that, because then Jerry Ford came back with the smart aleck comment that he only lusted after an ice cream cone. When you think about it, that's kind of weird, wouldn't you say? But at least Carter was being honest, all right? And the first George Bush, though, was rumored to have had an affair with an aide named Jennifer Fitzgerald. This is Bush Sr. Okay, there's, again, suggestive info about this, but it's all circumstantial. There's no real proof about that. But also, on October 2017, during the hashtag Me Too movement, an actress by the name of Heather Lind accused Bush Sr. of groping her and once telling her an inappropriate joke. Now, after she made that disclosure, 8 other women subsequently made similar allegations about the senior Bush. The names of some of these women were Christina Baker Klein and Rosalind Corrigan, who claimed to be 16 at the time she was inappropriately contacted by the senior Bush. And the senior Bush has since apologized for these incidents through his spokesman, Jim McGrath. Now, I don't know if this ever made the news. If it did, I missed it. But then we had an interesting period with President Bill Clinton, of course. The women involved with President Clinton, of course, Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, Catherine Wiley, and Monica Lewinsky. Now, many of us have been alive today, and they watched President Bill Clinton say on TV, there has not been a sexual relationship between he and Monica. He said, I did not have sex with that woman. I watched him say it. He said there was never any kind of improper relationship, which he defended as truthful on August 17, 1998. Okay, and he said this and explained his behavior because of his use of the present tense, famously arguing it depends on what the meaning of the word is. In other words, he was not at the time he made the statement still in a sexual relationship with Lewinsky. See, this just drives me crazy about politicians. Sometimes they talk to us like we're 5-year-olds. All right. And under pressure from Ken Starr, who had obtained Lewinsky's blue dress with the famous Clinton emission stain on it, as well as testimony from Lewinsky that the president had inappropriately, well, I would say inappropriately, used a cigar tube. I'm not going to describe it any further than that. Those of you are familiar with this know what happened. What Clinton did say was that I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. He did finally admit to that. He denied ever committing perjury because, according to Clinton, the legal definition of oral sex was not encompassed by sex per se. Come on, buddy. Okay, in addition, relying upon the definition of sexual relations as proposed by the prosecution and agreed by the defense and by Judge Susan Weber Wright, who was hearing the Paula Jones case, Clinton claimed that because certain acts were performed on him, not by him, he did not engage in sexual relations. Don't you just love it, okay? Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the sexual stuff, but George Bush the Younger. He did have an issue with alcohol prior to his presidency. He does talk about this openly in his book, Decision Points, and in interviews. And if you want to see Bush when he was intoxicated, just search it on YouTube. You can find it. But I do appreciate that the fact that the guy did talk about it and realized he needed to quit drinking, and he did. But hey, we're going to come back real briefly. I just want to say one last thing before we go in regards to this concept, but I appreciate you being here today. But Street Talk and other stuff, Mike, Maddog, Magnotti, stick around. We'll be right back.
Only one country could build a truck like this. Designed in California, engineered in Michigan, tested in Arizona, and assembled in Mississippi. Powered by Cummins of Indiana. The all-new Nissan Titan. It's an American classic. Is it on your list? Come down and see us at Town Nissan behind Costco in East Wenatchee.
I'm Jenny Rojanasatian, and this is Guada TV. Every week we will be bringing you a first look at North Central Washington business, tech, and education news. You'll hear from local influencers and innovators who live right here in the Valley. Together, we'll discuss hot topics, current events, and resources that can support your business, our schools, and this community. Join me every week, and let's get inspired.
I'm Grant Olson, and you're watching the NCW Life channel.
I'm Eric Grandstrom with NCW Life Sports.
I'm NCW Life News Director Steve Hare.
Catch us on Local Tel Channel 12.
You can watch us on Charter Channel 19 or stream us live on ncwlife.com.
Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.
Where we cover the local high schools, the Wenatchee Wild, and the pro teams out of Seattle.
On Saturday, we have a 90% chance of rain.
Catch it all right here on the NCW Life channel.
Okay, thanks for tuning in today, but I do want to close with this. Nothing I said today talking about these past presidents and their issues is in any way to mitigate or explain away the behavior and the attitudes of our current presidents as they have been described towards women. I'm sorry, I think the man is a disgrace when it comes to that. And what bothers me more is how some people support him despite the fact that he is who he is, has acted how he's acted, and has said what he said. All right, but we'll leave it at that. Thanks for being here today. Street Talk and other stuff. Mike, Maddog, Magnotti. See you next week. Bye-bye.